Welcome everyone to the Strapi V4 plugin and migration and creation event. It's a bit of a mouthful, but there we go. So today, actually, before we get into anything, let me just see the chat. Hello, the monkey call. Salut. How are you doing? Hey, Miss Mo. Hey, Desi. Hey, Matty. Hey, Gawan. Good to see familiar names. I think I'll wait a couple of minutes. Ooh, that's interesting. So many new names also. Hello, hello. Let me know where you're from. I don't know what our emoji is for the Strappy Twitch channel, but I think we need to figure one out. But anyway, drop your favorite emoji in the chat. Let's do that. That sounds perfect. Ooh, from Nairobi. That's amazing. Nairobi, Honduras. Lots of places. It's good to see. All right, we have like great numbers. We have almost 60. I won't push it, so I won't say I'll wait till we get to 60 people, and I'll sort of like kick things off because I'm really excited about today. Strapi plugin migration and creation. We've got this whole story that we want to tell today about Strapi's ecosystem and where we're going, and a lot of it is centered around plugins migration and creation. Today, I have two lovely guests from our expansion team, Rémi and Mark, who will be doing amazing demos on both migrating your V3 plugins to Strapi V4. I know a lot of people have requested that. And we'll also be looking at how to create plugins from scratch for the people who are really interested in that. And then at the end, we have a special surprise. So do stay over to the end so you can see that. But before we get into those amazing demos, I want to share something that we've been working on and that we just released today. Actually, like I mentioned, we're really making a lot of leaps and strides to making sure that you, the Strapi community, have everything you need to sort of manage, create, extend your Strapi application. And part of that is a UI kit. So today we released a blog post, which is just sharing that we have released a Figma UI kit for anyone to sort of add this to their plugin creation workflow. If you watched our event last week, what we shared was the new Strapi design system, which of course is in the product. But the whole point behind the Strapi design system is consistency in your design as you customize your Strapi applications, right? As you build plugins, as you use injection zones, or as you extend the admin panel. It makes things look much nicer for the people actually using your application. So that was the goal behind that, and that's for the developers. But I think anyone who understands the way software works, or anyone who cares to dive a little deeper into that, understands that designers also play a huge role. And that's the reason why we have this Strapi UI kit. It's a library of components in Figma, which I'll get into in a bit. And with that, we can sort of build mockups. And then this is also maintained by the Strapi team. We can build mockups for components in the design system so that you can play around with how you want your plugin or your Strapi admin to look before you go ahead with actually implementing that. Right, so let's look at that. So this is the Figma file. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Oh, is my voice okay? Someone mentioned there's a loop. Is everything good? Is it okay for everyone? Just drop like a message. Okay, voice is okay. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, that's good. Oh, I just see Eve joined us. Hello, Eve. Um, right, so we have the UI kit. Now let's look at what that looks like. So we have a bunch of design tokens, and the design team did an amazing job here. From a color system to iconography to a grid system, radius and shadows, different sizes for text and spacing, different fonts and type scales, different sort of views for navigation, secondary navigation, and this just helps you have an idea of what's possible with the Strapi design system. And all this is a Figma file. I'll share a link to this in. Let's see if I can send this. Let's see if Twitch will let me do that. Right. I hope that doesn't get eaten up by the bots. And then here's all the component libraries that you can play around with. I'll just zoom in. And they're really nicely designed, really nicely presented, so you can make a copy of this and then start to add that to your own designs. So we have buttons, of course, and we have cards, check boxes and radios, date time, practically all the components that are available in the Strapi design system are in this UI kit so that you can utilize them to create designs for whatever sort of customization you want to add to Strapi. So I'll just share a link actually because I think that that'll be much easier to the blog post announcing this, and you should be able to see um, everything else. So let's go. Ooh, my mouse just died on me. Anyways, let's share that. And that's sort of it with the design system. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're really, investing a lot into making it easy for anyone to customize Strapi either through the admin, through the API, through the interface. So have a look at the blog post, have a look at the UI kit, make a copy, give it a heart, check out our component library, and yeah, like send us some feedback. And that's it from me for now. And now we'll be bringing on Rémi, who will talk about plugin creation. So Rémi, let me bring Rémi on.
Thank
And
you,
let me take
Daniel.
myself off. Thank you. Right, so you're
All
ready to
right.
share your screen?
Yep, I am. And while I'm sharing my screen, I wanted to say that it's really nice to see that there are so many of you coming every time that we host one of these events. So we really
Yeah, I
appreciate
know.
you being here. Okay. I assume that my screen sharing is working well, so please tell me if that is not the case. But so today I wanted to show you a little bit of a demo about the plugin API and how it can help you build new plugins from scratch. And for that demo, I have set up a brand new Strapi application on the V4. And I'm using here the corporate template. So I use -- template corporate in my create Strapi app command so that my app right out of the box is configured with some pages component types, content types, sorry, and some data inside of these pages. And as part of the demo here, what I want to build is a tiny SEO plugin that's going to help us see if each one of our pages, so for example here, the homepage is well referenced on Google. So what I want to do is build a plugin that adds a button in this section. And when you click on it, it's going to do a Google search of the title of our page. So in this case, Strapi Corporate Site Starter. And on that Google page, we'll be able to see if our SEO is pretty good or no, based on if we see our website or not. So to get started, I'm just going to open my VS Code where I have my Strapi application that I just showed you set up. I'm going to stop the server and I'm going to run the yarn Strapi generate command that's going to enable us to create a new plugin. So here we can create plenty of different things to customize our Strapi application, but in our case, we just want to create a plugin. And I'm going to name our new plugin simply SEO. And here the generator has created a bunch of files for us in the src/SEO, src/plugins/SEO directory. But what we do need to set up manually, though, is that we need to enable the plugin. And that's actually what the generator is telling us, that we need to enable our plugin by adding the following code. So it's really providing us the snippet to copy and paste out of the box. We're going to need to paste it in the config/plugins.js file. So by default, this file will not exist in your Strapi application. So if you do not see it, you have to just create a new file, named plugins.js in the config folder. In my case, I already have one, so I'm just going to add a new plugin. And as you see, it's linking to the local directory where our plugin is developed, and we are setting enable to true. All right, so that should get our plugin to work. But now, since what we want to do is to make modifications to the front end of the Strapi admin panel, we need to restart our Strapi application using yarn develop and using the --watch admin flag that's going to tell Webpack to rebuild the admin on every save so that all of the changes we make to the React application of the Strapi admin are taken into consideration. And that's going to restart the app on a different server, which is by default port 8080. And since on a new port where there are no cookies yet, I need to sign in with my admin account. And I'll have access to my dashboard again. All right, so now that we have a plugin set up, we'll need to find how we can get access to this part of the Strapi application. How do we add some content there? And Strapi actually has a feature for that allows you to inject some React component in some specific pages and parts of the Strapi admin application. Those are called Strapi injection zones. So I'm going to show you where the documentation is hosted for all of the different resources that I'm mentioning. You have to go on the docs, so docs.strapi.io, and in the API reference, there should be a plugin API reference. And in our case, what we want to customize is the admin panel because it's the front end. So that's what I'm going to be clicking. And here, the API that I just mentioned, the injection zones API is listed here. So here we can see all of the different places where we can inject some components in React. And so let's try to find where the place that we actually need to inject our SEO component. And for us, it's this one, the edit view right links component, because we want to add a button between the configure the view and the edit buttons that are shown just there. It's exactly what we want. So to do this, we can copy and paste a snippet that is provided to us by the documentation, an example that is a very basic example of how you can inject a very minimal component into your Strapi application. So the place where I do this is in my src/plugins/SEO, so the name of my plugin. It's in the admin folder, and in the admin folder, there is an src directory with an index.js file at the root. And as we can see here in the API, where we need to inject this component and to register this component is inside of the bootstrap method, which is a method that is executed when the Strapi admin panel starts running. So let's edit this piece of code and just copy and paste the code that was provided for us. So now if we save our code and the server will restart, we should see a new component that is very simply going to say my compo on our Strapi admin panel. Sorry. So let's sign in again. And if we go on that page, which is the edit page inside of the content manager, we can see that we indeed have a my compo text here, but we just made a mistake. We forgot to change the name of the injection zone that we are using, because here we're using the information injection zone, whereas we want the right links injection zone that we were looking at in the docs earlier. So let's quickly fix that. And now if we refresh again, hopefully this time, we should see the my compo text in the right part of our Strapi application. And here it is. But you can see that here it kind of stands out and it doesn't blend in correctly in the Strapi application. So what we want to do is to use the Strapi design system to create a button that has really the same look and feel as all of the other Strapi buttons here. So what we can do for this is that we're going to look up how to use the Strapi design system. So to do this, I'm going to start by going into the Strapi design system website. You can see a component section. And in that component, there is a link that's taking you to a storybook application. And in that storybook, you can see all of the documentation for the button component. So let's check the documentation tab, and let's see if in the different examples that are provided to us, there is anything that looks like what we may want. And we can see that here, what looks the most like the buttons in our application would be the write content button right there. So I'm going to copy and paste that, that button in my application. But so what we want to do now, as we have started to see, is that we want to customize the React components that we're injecting into the Strapi admin panel. And we could do this right there, because this, even though it's quite simple, so it's not obvious, but this is a React component that simply returns a new string. But I would prefer to create a new component in a separate file that we're going to name SEO button, just so that it's a little bit cleaner than writing React in a file where there's just too many things already. So in that new file, I'm going to create a component named SEO button. And here I'm going to return the code that I just copied from the Storybook application. So let's not forget to export our SEO button. And since we're writing some JSX here, we need to import React so that Webpack knows that it needs to compile that code as it is some React. And here, the icon that we want to use is not the right icon, because that doesn't look like an SEO icon to me. So let's go to the Storybook application and try to find an icon that looks like what we want. So let's try to find the right place where all of the icons are documented. And let's see if there's anything that looks like some SEO stuff. So, hey, the search icon looks perfect for our needs. So I'm going to go back to my React component. I'm going to import it, and we can replace the right component with our search icon. And I'm also going to rename my button text to check SEO or check page SEO, I might even say. So now that we have a new React component ready, we need to import it inside of our inside of the function where we inject the injection zones. So let's call the SEO button here. And VS Code has just imported the component automatically for us. So let's try to see if this is working, because we've been making quite a few changes since the last time that we checked our application. So let's cross our fingers and see if we made any mistake or if we have successfully added a new button. And we can see that my application is crashing. So obviously I made a mistake, which is that I forgot to import the button component. So the button component is coming from the Strapi design system. So you can import it by saying import the component button from the package at strapi/design system. And let's retry and see if we have some better luck this time. All right, so this is working. We can see that our button is working correctly. We just need to make one change, which is to make the icon a start icon and not an end icon. So I'm going to quickly do this. And now we can actually start working on the logic of our component and how we can make it smart. So let's just check that the result is still what we expect. This looks perfect to me. So now what we want to do is to add an on-click listener to that button so that when we click it, it takes us to a new tab where we're going to search for the meta title on Google. So to do this, we need to access the content from the content manager. And thankfully, the Injection Zones API documentation tells us exactly how we can actually access the data from Strapi through a React hook called UCM Edit View Data Manager. And you can see that it's providing a lot of information. That's really all you can ask for to develop your Strapi components while having access to all of the Strapi information. So let's import this component into this hook into our Strapi component. And so I'm going to call my component here at the start, to call my hook at the start of my component. And in our case, what we want is to access the modified data. So the modified data is an object that holds all of the state for the firm as it's being edited. So that's exactly what we want. And here, if we do a console log of modified data, we'll be able to check if it's actually working and if it's holding all of the information that we need. So let's get back to our page. And now that my component has mounted, the hook has run and our console log has been printed to the console. And you can see that we've got all of the data we want. So in this case, it's looking a little small. I'm going to zoom in. In this case, what we want is the meta title property inside of the metadata component. So you can see that we've got a metadata component and a meta title inside of it. So that's perfect. Now that we know that we have all of the information we need, we can start working on a handler that's going to take us to a new page. So let's write a function that will be called handle check SEO. And that function is going to be called every time we click on the button. So I'm going to add an on-click prop saying handle check SEO. And what we want to do now is to write the code that's going to take us to a new Google tab. So since I don't have a lot of time and this is not very specific to Strapi, I'm going to copy and paste the snippet that I wrote earlier, and I'll be explaining the details. So what we're doing here is that we're first URL encoding the meta title property. And then we're building the search query on Google using that meta title. And then we're opening a new window on a new tab with that new search URL, and we're focusing on it so that it's open by default. So let's check if all of that code is working. I'm going to close my console, and if I click on my button, it's actually working. I am taking on a new tab and I'm searching from all of the data that is the page's title. So this is working well, but there's one thing that we have kind of forgotten to do, which is that we need to only enable this button on the page collection type. Because here I'm trying to access the metadata.metatitle property. But for example, if I go to the single type, that doesn't exist. So I'm going to go to the lead form submission rather. But that data doesn't exist. So I need to make sure that this component only appears on the on the page content type. So I can do this by writing a new condition, which is to check the slug to make sure that only if the slug is page.page, which is the slug of my content type, then we're going to display the component. Otherwise, we're just going to return null. So let's write this little bit of code. So we're also going to fetch the slug property from our hook. And if the slug is different than API : page.page, then we are not going to return anything, and our component will be invisible. So let's check that this is working. Gotta sign in again. So here you can see that the component that we've been working on doesn't appear on the single type content type. It doesn't appear either normally on the lead form submission content type, but if I go onto the page content type, it's working, and clicking on it still opens the page on Google. So that's a wrap for the little demo I had prepared for you today, and I hope it's helped you become more familiar with the Strapi plugin API, and specifically with the injection zones and how you can access Strapi data from these injection zones.
That's a cool demo, Remy. Thanks. I think the thing that I like the most is like limiting the scope of, the plugin to a single collection type. That's super useful. You don't want someone clicking the wrong thing in the wrong collection type. So yeah, cool stuff. I'm gonna start looking at some of the questions that people were asking, and let's get some of them answered. Sounds good.
All right.
So at the beginning, I think as you were starting to create the plugin, there were two homepage / index.js's. And someone wants to know what the difference between the two homepage / index.js files is.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again because I want to figure out what these two files are, because I'm not familiar with every file that the generator creates for us. So I'm assuming that, okay, where are these files? So it's not in components. Okay, so there is one on the pages,
Yep.
which is where we have the page that is created for us by default on our plugin. If we click on our SEO plugin, this code, happy coding, is coming directly from this homepage component inside of the pages.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, the difference is going to be the containers. And oh yeah, okay, exactly the same code. I do not actually have the answer. I'm going to try to see if the container is called anywhere. But no, I don't want to talk about things if I don't have the answer to them. I'm going to research that with the rest of the team, because I cannot tell you right now why these two files exist, even though they have the same content.
No worries. We can get that and then share that a bit later. And let's get to the next question. I think this one was more of like a really minor one. Someone wanted to know, when you were logging into your Strapi app, you didn't tick the remember me. So does the cookie not work in development mode?
Yes, actually, there have been some issues with the session persisting while developing local plugins. I'm troubleshooting this with the team right now, but it seems to be a cross-origin request kind of issue. So that's why sometimes I wasn't able to stay logged in. So that's why I didn't click the button. Sometimes it's because I knew in my case it wasn't always reliable. But not everyone is running into this, so I don't know yet what's the cause for this.
Okay, no worries. As soon as you figure that out, to let us know. And then the next question, I think you sort of answered when you did the last item. So it's like, how do we get form data from a custom component?
from the hook that we used. But yeah, I guess this was before we looked into
Before you
it.
did it. Exactly. And then the next one is, are you planning to create documentation for the helper plugin? I'm not sure how to know what it has as a tool without reading the source code.
Um, um, so the Strapi helper plugin is not part of my scopes team, so I'm not the owner for this piece of code. But I think the goal for it was to reuse some pieces of logic in several parts of the Strapi code base. So to actually build Strapi and not to build the Strapi ecosystem. So normally it's not to build Strapi plugins, for example. So it's really made at first to be an internal tool, and normally you wouldn't need it because I think part of that plugin reason to exist is being replaced by the new design system that's holding, for example, all of the different components. So if you do need it, the documentation is going to be inside of Strapi, docs.strapi.io. So for example, with the UCM data hook. But yeah, overall, I'm not sure that there are any plans for a documentation entirely about the helper plugin.
Okay, thanks for the context. We'll pause on questions for now so we can bring on Mark. Mark,
Hey,
hello, and thanks again, Remy. I'll just send Remy to the back. All right, Mark, how are you doing?
all right. Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen.
Sure thing. I'll let you take over, and yeah, let's see everyone soon.
Do you see my screen? Just to make sure.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking about migrating a V3 plugin to V4, and I'm gonna focus, since Remy focused a lot on the front end, I'll focus some more on the back end, I guess. So first I'll just show you my V3 plugin. It's just a simple implementation of Stripe. And all it does is creates a content type. It has two basic features really. It creates a content type and allows that to connect to another content type and process payments on it. So I can also, I can also open a payment in my Stripe dashboard, but I probably won't migrate that part of the plugin in this demo. So, all right, the first thing that I have to do is, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all my files, all my plugin files to a new folder, and I'm actually going to use a script to do this. I'm not going to do it by hand. So this script will be available to you. I mean, it already is, but we've also have a CLI that was added by somebody in the community. That was Thibaut. I don't know if he's watching right now, but I'm eternally grateful for his work. So I actually need to change into my plugins. So C plugins. And I'm just going to run the command. And I'm going to say that I'm migrating a plugin, this plugin, and actually I'm going to copy the path so I don't make a mistake. And I'm going to put it here. I've already created a V4 app and set up a few things, but I'll walk you through all of that. So I'm just going to run this. And so the script's just logging to tell me that it's what it's moved and where it's moved it. So I'm going to head over there, which is my V4 app. And one more. And so here, if I open this up, inside I should have my V4 plugin, which I do. It's right here. And we're going to take a look at everything in there. I just want to reiterate that all the script did was move the files. Didn't really make any big changes, but we're going to look at each file as we migrate. But the first thing I want to do is, like Rémi mentioned, I want to update my plugins config on the application. So I'm just going to copy over the v3 config and paste it here. And right away, I already have some things in there. I've already added that environment variable. So I need to put all of this in a config object. So I'll just move that really quick. And it's very important that I enable it. In other words, otherwise it won't work. And then I just need to provide the path to my plugin. where my plugin's located. I had done it this way, which isn't necessary, but I guess it's okay. I'm just going to import a few things. All right, so now my plugin should be enabled. And we can look inside the plugin itself. The first thing that I want to look for, there are two important files that a Strapi v4 plugin has to have, and that's the Strapi server.js and Strapi admin.js. These are the entry points for your plugin. Everything has to live inside there. So I'll first look at that. As I mentioned, we're going to focus on Strapi server, so I'm only going to look in here. And I see that points to a server directory. Again, this is this folder structure is something like sort of a convention at Strapi, but you can organize the plugin however you want. So I'll head over to the index, and this is like the heart of my plugin. Everything that is going to be in my plugin has to be in this file, and if it's not in this file, then it won't be in my plugin. So I can see that everything that I have some services, controllers, content types. There is one thing before we get moving. I want to mention that the script did change what v3 called models to what v4 now calls content types. And there are a few differences here. For instance, now like what you would see as a settings.json file in v3 is now a schema.json file. And most of this should look pretty familiar. There's one change here, which is this info object that has some more information. And then when I export my content type, I can point to the schema, and I can also point to life cycles. So if I have any lifecycle hooks, in this case, I don't have any. I could technically delete all that, but I'm just going to leave it for the time being. And then finally, I'm just exporting my content type here. So now that we're done with that, I think we can run the first yarn develop and get our first error. I'm going to try and go through some of what I think would be common errors you might run into. And we're going to get many of them. So, all right, so let's go yarn develop. Right, so the first thing it says the key of the content type. The key of the content type should be the same as its singular name. So when I think of the key of the content type, I go to my content type and I see what I'm exporting. And this is the key for my content type. And when I see singular name, I think of that info object that I just showed you. I remember seeing singular name. And the first thing that I notice is that this is kebab case and this is camel case. So I'm pretty sure on the info object, it's mandatory that it's kebab case. So the fix here is going to be to add a key like this. And if I run yarn develop again, I should get past this error. And I do. I have a new error. Creating endpoint get Stripe payment cannot read property index of undefined. So I'm wondering, it doesn't tell me exactly what file or where this is located, but I see that it has something to do with routes because of get. And cannot read property index of undefined. So I know there's an issue here. It's trying to understand on where this handler is. So this is my controller. And I know that I have a controller called Stripe payment. So I want to see how am I exporting my controller. And sure enough, it's sort of the same problem. I'm exporting it as camel case, and my routes are looking for something that's kebab case. So I have two options here, really. I can do the same thing I did with content types and make the change here. But instead, I'm going to make the change here on all my handlers. So this will be Stripe payment. And so that should get me past that error. All right, great. So it does. I have a new error, and this one's in my services. So just to actually recap really quick, we've done content types and we've done routes. We've seen both of those files already. So now we're in the service where I initialize Stripe. And it's telling me that secret key not set in Stripe plugin config. Well, I know that I set my config, and I'm really actually expecting this error to throw here. But the thing is that I actually don't want to console log this and show you how I debug this because I don't want you to see my secret key. But and the other thing that I have to mention here is that I didn't really find this in the documentation. I'm going to be honest. This is something I found in another plugin source code. But the way that I found to get this config, because the problem actually here is that this is not my Strapi config, my plugins config that I set here. The way that I found to do that is that there's a config object on Strapi that has a getter, and I can provide the path to my plugin. And I'm actually going to do a find and replace for this because I think there's 2 places that I do this in my plugin. So as you can see, I've already done it. Let's see here, I want this. And I want to replace it with this. All right, so that should get me past this error. And it does, and my application is running, which is great. So I'm just gonna head over there and show you what that looks like. So like I said, I did a little bit of setup in here. I already see that it's created my Stripe payment content type, which is good. And then I've already created a product and published it. And now the next thing is to try and create a Stripe payment. But before I do that, I know there's a famous error that I always get, and that is permissions. I want to make these routes public. So I'd head over to the users and permissions plugin. And I'd expect to, actually, I'm just going to make sure my product, yeah, okay, that's already set. I'd expect to see my Stripe payment plugin here, or my simple Stripe plugin here, but it's not here. So there are 2 ways actually that I can make my routes public. And I'm going to show you this one first, is that I can put auth false on the config here, and that should give me it should give me access publicly at simple Stripe / Stripe payment. So if I go to that, I get message okay, which is good. That's what I expect. Maybe I should just show you that if I remove that, it doesn't work. Yeah, so there you go. But I actually want to do something different here because I really want to show you that how to make your plugin appear here. In a plugin, you can specify, you can actually return an object here, and you can specify admin routes or content API. And so then in here, I can say type. I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So yeah, I can specify type, content API, and then my routes, which are just these. So I'll just move them. Yeah, so now if I head back to my application and refresh, I should see my plugin, which I do. So here I'm just going to make all of them public. And now we can test the controllers and see what's going wrong over there. For this, instead of using something like Postman, I created a simple front-end application. That way I can also have a credit card. The way that Stripe works is that you want to create a payment intent as soon as possible, and then you want to update that payment intent. So we're going to have a create action and an update action that we'll need to fix. So I'm just going to, when I click this button, it'll try and create a Stripe payment intent. And I get an error. So it says, cannot read property find one of undefined, property find one of undefined, and it gives me in my controller Stripe payment on line 32. So I'll go here and I see that right here I'm calling find one on my Strapi services. And this is the model that I'm getting from my config. This is the model that I set here saying product. So it's actually saying Strapi.services product find one. And the way I'm going to debug this is to stop my server and run yarn strapi console. And what this does is allows me to access the Strapi instance, and I can take a look at all my services. And what I notice here is that I don't see product. I see API.product.product. So I'm gonna need to replace this like so. And that should get me past this error. I think you have to restart the cut. So now I'm going to try and create a payment intent again, and it's going to fail. Models plugin simple Stripe, that Stripe payment not found. It doesn't give me a line here, but I can see right away that it's right here. And if I scroll up to my log before, I see a bunch of plugin, but I don't see a lot of plugins. So my first hunch is to just remove the S. And I'm gonna cut my server and try it again. And so I'll try and create another payment intent, and it failed. What's good is that I don't have the same error. I have a new error, create expects a data object. So I'm running create here. And I think the error is pretty explicit that it just wants me to add an object with a key data. So I'm going to try again. And it worked. So that's great. I just want to, if I go back here, I just want to see, yeah, so it created my first payment intent, and you can see that it still needs payment. I haven't actually processed a credit card. I just want to refactor something because I don't want to use this low-level interaction with the database. Instead, I want to use the entity service. And oh, and by the way, I'm gonna send, or I don't know if Daniel's already shared maybe some links with you to documentation, but the entity service allows me to have access to a lot of these like CRUD operations, and the create action, the create method, I should say, accepts two arguments. The first being the UID, and the second being the data that I want to use to create with. So this should work. Hopefully it works. If I refresh, and yeah, I got another 200. So I should have 2 here now, which I do. So that's great. So now I just need to update the update action, which is really the most important because that's where I get a user's credit card information. So I'm just going to go ahead and give that a try. I'll create another one and 4242 answer everything. If I try this, it will certainly fail. And it does. So I already see an error that looks pretty familiar. And if I look here, I'm using Strapi query.update. So I already know that I want to replace this again with the entity service. And for an update, I would do strapi.entityService.update, and the update takes 3 arguments. First off, this needs to be plugin. The first argument being the UID. The second argument is an entity ID. So that would be this ID here. I'm going to have to get that. That doesn't exist yet. And then the last argument is a data object. And it's the field that I want to update. In my case, that would be the Stripe payment status with the Stripe payment status that I'm getting from my request. So yeah, I still need to get this entity. And for that, I am going to use query. I'm going to say const entity Strapi Strapi.query. Again, the UID. Dot find one, and here I'm going to use where Stripe product ID equals the Stripe product ID. So I'm saying where Stripe product ID, this key, equals the Stripe product ID I'm getting from my request. So if all goes well, I hope I've misspelled something. If all goes well, this should work. So I'll refresh, we'll create a new one. And it looks good. So if I head over here and refresh, I can see that I have a payment that succeeded. So that's it. The backend of my plugin is officially migrated to Vue 4.
Huge applause. That was great. And we have actually a lot of really interesting questions. Are you okay taking some?
Sure, I'll try my
All
best.
right. Okay, so where do we start? First of all, great demo. You made migrating look like a breeze. And yeah, shout out to Thibaut for the code mods and anyone else who's contributed to making that happen. Right. Where do I start? I think around is it still possible to wrap the life cycle of user content types to watch updates and not the content types in the plugin?
I wish I could answer this question, but I really haven't fooled around with life cycles yet. So I really wish I could answer that question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. And if you want to find out more about the life cycle, I shared a link to the content type / models documentation if you want to dig into that. Hopefully that can help answer your question. And then we have another question here, particularly on the routes section of your plugin. I'm not sure what you did with the routes of your plugin. Why do you need to put it in a nested object? What is the difference with the part of the doc that talks about the plugin API reference in server.html?
Yeah, I don't have access to that doc exactly, but what I found with the routes, and also this is not something that I found that's specifically documented. I'm not sharing my screen, but in those routes, you can specify certain routes that are going to be just for the Strapi admin panel, or you can specify that they're going to be served up on the content API. When I used auth false, you saw that like there wasn't API / my plugin's route. It was just my plugin's route. And when I specified that it was on the content API route, then I was serving it up on API. Yeah, I didn't show that, but it's actually being served on API / my plugin route. So.
Okay, hopefully that answers that question. I think I'll start from the bottom now, just because there's like so many that I have probably been covered already. This one is from Saad. He wants to know if Strapi supports writing plugins in TypeScript for V4.
I don't know if Strapi supports it, but I imagine you could do something to make it work. But my quick answer would be no, it's not supported.
Okay. Yeah,
I have seen a
definitely
plugin.
possible.
I've seen a plugin in V3. I think the Mux plugin is developed in TypeScript.
Oh, nice.
So I
So
don't
it is
know.
possible. It would just take some
So
effort,
maybe
I'm
you see
guessing.
how they're migrating to V4. Remy, I think Remy might know more if you want to bring him on.
All right, let's bring Rémi on. Hello,
Hey,
Rémi.
Mark. Yeah, I just wanted to say that it is possible actually to build some Strapi v4 plugins using TypeScript. That's not something that we enable out of the box with the plugin generator, but if you want to build your own plugin architecture, you can set it up to use TypeScript. The thing that makes it possible is that the new plugin API only relies on the Strapi admin and on the Strapi server files being ready. But for example, you could set up your entire code in an SRC directory where all of the code is in TypeScript, have some kind of TypeScript compiler, like Babel, for example, and compile all of that code into the Strapi admin JavaScript file on the Strapi server JavaScript file. That is definitely possible. Oh, like the one requirement is that the code that ends up in Strapi admin on Strapi server is JavaScript, but where that code is coming from in terms of compilation, that's entirely up to you.
Okay, I was reading up. There's another question here that came up between what the difference is between query and entity service, and
Yeah.
I'll just read out because I think it's in the documentation. It says Strapi's query engine API gives unrestricted internal access to the database layer. So that's if you use query. And if you want, and is not aware of complex structures like component side dynamic zones. So if you want to use component side dynamic zones, so you have to use like the entity service so you have access to those. Otherwise, query isn't aware. Scott, I hope that answers your question. So we have not much time. I think Remy's got something special for us. I would advise jumping onto the Discord and dropping a couple questions. We have a nice plugins channel and a V4 channel. I'll drop a link to the Discord while Remy is sharing what he has for us. Remy, do you wanna go for it?
Yep, absolutely. I assume that you can all see my screen correctly. But this time I'm not. I'm not sharing my screen to do a new demo because we've done quite a bit of demoing in this call today. But it's a little bit more of an announcement because you may remember that a few months ago now in September, Emily from our team created an article called Strapi Market is coming soon. And I am very happy to announce that the first step of the Strapi marketplace release has been achieved because you are now able to submit your plugins to us, and we'll be reviewing them to later display them on the future Strapi Market plugin marketplace. So I'm just going to share you where you can actually submit your plugins. So you're going to want to go into market.strapi.io/submit-plugin. So I count on Daniel to share with all of you the link for that. And so just to submit your plugins, you only need to fill this form. So you need a plugin name. You need your plugin to be published on NPM so that you can share the NPM package URL with us. It has to be open source. So we need a link to your repo. You need to enter some description, a logo, as well as some screenshots if your plugin has some front end. And then we'll need some basic contact information so that we can get back to you, and you'll need to accept the terms. And if you do all of that and submit your plugin, we will then be reviewing it. So to make sure that your plugin can be accepted and displayed on the Strapi marketplace, we have set up some guidelines. So we strongly encourage you to read those before building your plugins if you want to push your plugins on the Strapi marketplace. But we've created a document on that page that, again, Daniel can share with you, strapi.io/Strapi market guidelines. We've entered a lot of guidelines which are about both some marketing rules, some design rules, and some technical rules, just to make sure that your plugins are awesome so that we can all make Strapi awesome together. So I'm going to quickly go over them so that you can see it's quite a complete document. You can see why you'd want to build some plugins on Strapi. You can see how the review process is going to happen so that you can know what's going to happen after you submit this new form. And you can see all of our expectations in terms of some legal and marketing expectations, as well as some tech, as I said, expectations. So for example, if you have some front end, we want you to use the design system so that your plugin integrates well into the overall Strapi application, some security rules as well. And Raf from the expansion team has wrote some very exhaustive design principles, which are very complete. So these are not only rules that you have to follow, that are only a constraint to you, but we think that they can really help you build some quality plugins with having in mind all of the different rules that are going to be taken into consideration to be featured on the marketplace. So now we think that with the plugin API, with the card mode that Mark has shown, that shows you how to convert a plugin from V3 to V4, with the design system, with the new UI kit on Figma, with the documentation. You really have all of the pieces put together so that you can build some quality plugins. So we are really looking forward to see what you can build with all of these resources that we have provided for you. And we would be really happy to receive your submissions and to later promote your plugin on the Strapi market, because we want your plugin to be successful, and we'll be very happy to help you in building those plugins. So that's it for the announcement today. Again, check out the links market.strapi.io/submit plugin, as well as the guidelines page, because these are going to be the two links that you need if you want to be featured when the marketplace launches. So thank you for
Nice.
letting me do this announcement, Daniel.
Anytime. It's quite the announcement. I feel like this is the beginning of something very, very big. And once the marketplace launches, if you do it now and submit your plugin, you're gonna be ahead of the curve. Everyone's gonna be looking at your plugin, everyone's gonna be using it. So a lot of people are excited about extending their Strapi apps in that way. So get submitting, get building. I think we've had two amazing demos here from Remy on migrating, and Mark, sorry, from migrating your plugin, and then Remy for building plugins. So we have the docs team has done a great job. The expansion team has done a great job with the portal to submit your plugins with the guidelines. So I think you should have everything you need. I don't know if you're in the Discord. There's the plugin channel. Remy, have you shared those links in the plugin section so that people who might not be here can check those out? But if you do join the Discord, you should see them at some point. And yeah, we're excited to see what you build. That's it from us. We're gonna take it to Discord, I guess. Yeah. And thanks for joining, as usual. You've all been lovely.
All right. Thank you for attending, everyone.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks.
I'll end it now. Ciao.
All right.